Thanks again for joining us. And today I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Dr. Lloyd Hamilton. Lloyd, would you just give a brief intro for the crowd? You are muted.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Adam, and hi, everyone. My name's Lloyd Hamilton. I'm a machine learning engineer here at Hypercube. I've did my PhD in neuroscience and decided I wanted to do something else. So I've been machine learning engineer here now for about 3 or 4 years and built a lot of machine learning infrastructure across my time. So yeah, quite excited to show you guys some of the AI-powered tools that we've built here at Hypercube and to share with you guys with what the capabilities of what large language models can do today.
Amazing. So what we're going to do is I'll talk through a little bit about, set the scene, talk about some of the interesting stuff, but then all the meat and the fun bit will actually be handed over to Lloyd in the middle. And we're going to present AI-powered contract management. So this is a topic we're seeing more and more and more of, and one of the applications around large language models that I think actually has the biggest potential within the energy space, especially if you're developing assets or building like complicated projects or have really interesting agreements. So we'll talk a little bit about the challenge space. Lloyd will show you some really cool stuff, and we'll just wrap up with final thoughts, and there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. So for Kira joining us, there will be on the chat and the Q&A, so feel free to fire questions in there and we'll look to either answer them live or follow up after the fact. The recordings will be made available, they'll all get sent out to you, and yeah, any follow-up sessions or things you want to book with us, just give us a shout and let us know. And before we let you move on, the QR code on the page just here should take you to the sign up page for the Beyond Energy community. So here at Hypercube, we're putting together a community of professionals in the energy sector to really collaborate, knowledge share, and learn about some of the exciting stuff that's going on in data and technology and how that AI and things are driving the sector forward. We're actually hosting our first in-person event next Tuesday down in London. So jump onto the page, sign up to get details and information on that. It's all free, and some great panels and things. We'll get into the details of that towards the end of the talk. So move forward on my slides. So for those of you that don't know, CEO and co-founder here at Hypercube. I was head of machine learning engineering for an energy tech startup in a previous life, and the vision really was to build the go-to partner for the energy sector to unlock data, AI, cloud, software solutions. My feel from working in energy for so long was that many of the consultancies we used or worked with were really good techies and they knew the solution space, but they just didn't deeply understand energy. Energy is complicated, right? Ever-changing hardware requirements, things like BESS and grid scale batteries and storage, they're very data hungry. There's this, in my opinion, technological wave coming to energy that is going to change by orders of magnitude the requirement for really intelligent solutions, both for processing contracts, doing IoT, looking at optimizing assets, understanding grids, forecasts, everything, right? If you want to get up to speed and start delivering value in projects like that, then a general partner's not going to cut it anymore. There's so much knowledge transfer has to happen for you to even sort of start at zero, that Hypercube was born out of the idea that, well, actually, if I hire and bring in experts from energy, we can bring all that experience to bear on the sector. And it's been a great journey so far. Started 2.5 years ago, fast approaching our 3rd birthday. We are 30-ish people spread across the UK and the US. We are ever growing, and we've got a lot of open hires at the moment. So if you are interested in exploring a career at Hypercube, give us a shout. We are constantly posting new job roles and bringing people into the business. My incredible team are in the photo at the bottom of the page. That was from our last kind of all hands get together, and we've grown since then, so it's been quite exciting. And special bonus points if you can spot what's in Lloyd's hand in that photo, which is my favourite part of the picture. Who do we work with? Energy is a bit of a funny one in that it's not really a niche at all. We are energy experts, but energy is colossal, right? We do everything from traditional oil and gas and legacy stuff, but our major focus the last few years has been grid-scale BESS and onshore and offshore wind and solar projects. We've done some really interesting behind-the-meter stuff, and we've deployed some smart solutions into the renewable heat and the kind of EV space. But if you're building big projects or you're trying to trade big energy assets, that's probably where the bulk of our expertise has been over the last few years. And we spend a lot of our time in that space with new organizations that are developing new assets and going on the incredibly painful journey of wrangling dozens of companies and hundreds of project managers and legislation and things like that. And in that space, I think we've hit a really interesting point in time where the technology can be really helpful, and large language models are going to unlock a new wave of efficiencies that I think are going to revolutionize the way this work's done. We'll talk more about that today and some of the cool stuff Lloyd's building to support that journey. From intermittent forecasting for energy traders, we can help predicting volatility, financial uncertainty. We can help with asset performance, predictive maintenance. And actually, I think for people outside the energy sector, you might look at these and think it's all time series forecasting workflows. But actually, like the regulatory piece and making sense of regulatory changes, or building like hyper-personalized reports on, well, what does this piece of legislation mean? Like quickly processing and making sense of PPAs and how they interact with each other across company boundaries. How do you do settlement, right? These are all problems that, yes, there is a kind of structured data time series element to, but there's also really hard, unstructured text-based and multimodal challenges to the problems that we're only now seeing technologies deployed that can really make sense of. So I'll just rattle through this really quickly because I want to get onto the fun bit and hand over to Lloyd. So effectively, we see in energy infrastructure project development roughly these 6 stages, everything from sourcing the opportunity and like looking at the potential. You get into survey design, you're looking at maps, you're understanding some of the legislation for the local area, reports and studies, like lots of desktop stuff, ecological surveys, right? Once you get into that, you get into the kind of financial part of the project, like understanding the finances, the long-term opportunities around how you're going to make revenue on the site. You then maybe there's a capital event and you do a funding round to actually fund the infrastructure build, because these things aren't cheap. And then you get the unenviable job of actually building it and running the project. And every single stage of this is incredibly complicated and requires not only really good communication between people, but lots of exchanging of documents, understanding of legal contracts, legislation, regulation. Previously, you would pay lawyers lots and lots of money to do absolutely all of that. And actually, the industry's not changed in a very long time. We've worked with organizations in this space, and we were told a story by one developer that for one battery, not even it was like a 50 megawatt BESS site, they had, as they described it, millions of words spread across thousands of documents written by hundreds of people in dozens of companies, right? And they said there was one woman in their business that if she left, they would just close the whole project down, because there was no way they could understand or unpick where the project was without that inherent knowledge that she had of being across everything. And why is that the case? Well, up until very recently, computers weren't very good at this stuff. Like, we are still using tools that were built in the 80s to deliver projects in the 2020s, right? PDFs, rainbow colored spreadsheets, email, conversations, phone calls. Like, computers weren't good at processing and making sense of this up until the new hype wave around AI and large language models. But that is about to change. And what we're going to show you today shows you actually things that we've already built and things we're developing further that are going to really accelerate this journey and unlock potential by removing a lot of the manual craft, that kind of like busy work that is necessary and essential, but isn't really value add. It's not the creative work that experts and professionals like yourselves were brought in to do or excited to do. That's all empowered by big changes in the technology landscape, right? You've got this new hype wave, large language models, AI, right? And these things have been around for a while, but ChatGPT was an engineering marvel that kind of brought it to the masses. And the story I like to tell is, up until very recently, this hasn't really happened before, where you could build a solution and for free have some of the most powerful companies in the world invest billions in improving the solution on your behalf. That's what's happening with foundational models every week. Lloyd will keep me right, but every week there's a new model of the month that's the best thing since the last one, and it can do more for cheaper, it's more powerful, it's smarter, it's making more sense of stuff. So in this diagram, that's the kind of bottom layer, the foundational models. That's OpenAI, that's Gemini from Google, and so on and so forth. Unless you've got billions to spend, I wouldn't bother building one. I would let these enormous organizations try and win that battle. On top of that, you've got then some really clever businesses, and there was a Y Combinator post about how the next big wave of like unicorns is all going to be in this SaaS products that are built on top of them. So they're just wrapping those foundational powerhouses in something that makes it easy to use and apply to your domain. And that's all well and good, but I think the real value for your day-to-day workflows, if you're going to be building tools internally or engaging with Hypercube to build tools, is in the really bespoke, verticalized niche solutions. And you'll hear a lot over the next 18 months about agents and agentic AI. Put simply, an agent is a prompt to a large language model that has been well crafted and well designed, a clear set of instructions that applies to one solution or one use case. Razor thin is usually better, a really tightly defined use case. Then with that prompt, a set of evaluations and metrics and tests that prove that the model is staying within the bounds of what good looks like. And then finally, you may give that agent some tools. So you go into ChatGPT and it will do lots of clever things, right? But it's not going to look up your internal database. It's probably not going to write you an Excel spreadsheet or update formulas. You can now do that. This interesting technology is called Model Context Protocol that Lloyd wrote an incredible blog post about how you give the agents tools that it can use to do more with. So that is a rough, broad definition of agentic AI and what that means, and this is what we'll show you today. And I like to think, like, imagine you bought a car, right? And next week, Mercedes came along and put a cheaper, faster, more powerful engine in it. And then a week later, BMW replaced the engine with something even cheaper, more powerful, faster, right? And that just kept happening. That is what's happening in tech right now. That band of mega companies at the bottom are battling it out for dominance and investing billions to build more powerful engines to put in your solutions at no additional cost to you. In fact, costs are going down because this is a competitive new market that we're just seeing emerge. So what we're going to show you today is an agent or a suite of agents, because multi-agent systems are going to become all the rage. So this is a suite of agents that put together, you can build complex solutions out of. Lloyd's built an incredibly powerful tool that allows us to very quickly look at, analyze, process documents related to renewable project development, compare them, analyze them, and update other tools in the suite, Excel, email, so on and so forth. And you can start to see how threading this throughout the entire development workflow of a renewable infrastructure project can really unlock a lot of efficiencies. So that's enough from me. Without further ado, Lloyd has the demo.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Adam. I'll start by sharing my screen. Can you let me know when you can see the screen, Adam? It'll take a couple of seconds for it to render.
Yep, I'm in the Hypercube AI.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so today, as Adam already talked about, we're going to show you a demo about AI contract management. And I think there's kind of three things I like to get across in this demo, and just to demonstrate the potential of large language model. I think if you asked me this question 3 years ago, what's a large language model? I would say it is a glorified autocomplete that takes more energy than a light bulb. But that's kind of different now. In 2025, we're seeing the age of agentic systems that can do more than just autocomplete or retrieve data. And yes, today we're going to talk about a large language model that can retrieve data and fetch it and summarize it for you. But what I really want to get across is the capability to do more than that, which is to take actions upon those data sets. So today we're going to talk about large language model used as a tool to process data, and also use it as a tool to perform analysis and also to create obligations, registers, and then also sending that and composing it into an Excel document that you can download. The other thing I also like to show also is when you retrieve these data, for example, you would like to create a notification and you would like to email someone about these differences. And that's something that we're going to be looking at today. So without further ado, let's just jump into this demo. So I've got a chat interface here, and we can ask the agent what it's capable of. So let's just say, hello, what can you do?
While that's loading, can you zoom in just to make it big? Because I think some people are like that. Yeah, last time we did one of these small laptop screens, make it hard. That's great.
Okay, so it says an expert lawyer specializing in comparing contracts and extracting key informations. And I've kind of prompted this large language model to be an act as a expert lawyer. So it can compare documents, extract key differences, find specific information within documents, create Excel files, and notify events through a service called SNS, or called Simple Notification Service. So let's take a look. Say, for example, I have a contract and I am interested in understanding a specific topic. So I can say, would you be able to help me understand the differences? Sorry, the definition of e-commercial operation. Now, just for additional context, what are these contracts? I have an example here in Word document. So in the database, we have uploaded multiple of the same contract, but across different dates with slight changes in specific areas. And I'm not going to go through this whole contract, but this is just a template contract. You can see there's still placeholders in many places. But looking at a table of content, this is about a 269 page contract and has a lot of information here, all the way about the definitions of specific words, who the borrower is, and yeah, I'm not going to go into this. And you can see this is an example data set with lots of placeholders. I have filled in specific information on those placeholders for this demo, so we'll see what that will look like. So one of those placeholders, the commercial operations date. So I say, would you be able to help me understand commercial operations date? So let's hit enter. So what it's doing then is going to the database, fetching the data, and helping me understand what the commercial operations date. So like I said, there are multiple documents in this database, and looks like there are three. So there are three different definitions of commercial operations date. One says it's 85% the in-stock capacity estimate. The example one saying it's 25%, and then example 4 is saying 92%. What we can do is we can say it looks like there are significant differences. Would you be able to tell me what the differences are across all the documents or the commercial? Okay, So what it's done then, it's gone and fetched all the 3 different documents and gave us the differences. But what I don't like here is it doesn't have the references. So I'm going to ask it, can you reference your work? Okay. Could you amend the response with your... Okay, it's not coming up. Let's try that again. It is coming up, but I'd just like to show you sometimes the large language model does misbehave in the cursor demos.
We do promise, and we can send the video out, but in the demo, the practice run for this yesterday, we were getting inline references which were clickable to each of the document, which was really powerful. I guess while it's loading that as well, it's worth noting, if you notice under the command that Lloyd's given it, could you compare the documents? There was like using a sort of snake case definition function called scroll up just a smidge. And I see that you get distinct agreement dates. So when I talked about you give the agent, you give the large language model tools, that is a tool that Lloyd has written that does a specific task. So it's not just thinking up on the fly how to do this. Lloyd's told it how to do that.
Thank you. So yeah, as I was saying, I wanted to reference its work, and this time with the right prompt, it was able to. So there's a bit of refining that needs to be done. But the important thing is here, we can show that the document, if it does load, oh, it's not loading. It was loading earlier. There we go. Just takes a while to download. So we have the commercial operations date for example 2. And for example 2, it says as 85% install capacity estimate. Let's take example 4, give it some time to load. And that says 92% rated power capacity. So it looks like there's a definition called rated power capacity and install capacity estimate that's different across the both contracts. Okay, so these are important things, and let's just say we want to send an email to notify people. So I could say, could you summarize your finding and create a well-formatted notification and send it. Now this is where it's gone from retrieving information, summarizing it, and now it's going to go send that information over. And in this case, it's going to send an email. Let's see if it's arrived. So can you notify users of the differences? So now it's using a tool called a notify event, and it summarized the notifications of detailing the commercial operations date. So in a minute, I should get an email here. Of course, it's not well formatted, but we can see the important bit is that it has sent an email saying there are multiple differences across different contracts. So let me see if I can make this bigger. No, I can't. There are multiple differences across different contracts. One saying there's 92% rated power capacity. Second one being that there's 85% installed capacity estimates. And then the third one that is 25% for example 1. But the important thing I'd like to get across that, you know, this part here, lots of tools can do. So you could build your own custom GPT in OpenAI to do this, and your custom workflows. But this part here, which is quite bespoke and unique to us, is that you can build tools that can take a summary of an output, formats it in an email and send it. So the next part I'd like to show you guys is looking at how we can build an obligations register. So we can say, hi, would you be able to help me create an obligations register? So what we need, so it knows that we need one of the document. So can you get me the distinct dates of the documents? So I just need one of those dates. Can you help me create the document dated? Help me track key events and dates. So what it's done then, it's gone into the document. It's done a search on key dates. So essentially going in, looking for dates and trying to find relationships to those dates. Put it in the format that's quite difficult to read in JSON. So we can say, thank you. Or we say thank you to your AI. Can you?
So we don't have a company policy of being polite to these models, but I always am, as we can see, Lloyd is.
And what I've done is asked it to export it as an Excel. Okay, so what's done is create an Excel, the obligations register, and stored it in the cloud. And I've just downloaded that. Let's open that. And we have it here. So again, this is just a demonstration of extracting data and then creating an Excel document that you can use and probably share it around, and much easier through the email. But you can see here, it's gone, it's extracted information, got key details like what your obligation in maintain and comply with any transaction authorizations. Of course, there will need to be a bit refinement because the data that we're using is all mock data, synthetic data. It's not really representative of what we would see in real world, other than that it's a large piece of document and has the format that resembles a real document. Yeah, so this is where I'll stop. But again, just to summarize what we've done here, we've used the large language models to retrieve data, fetch information, and then we've used it to summarize the information and send a notification to our users. And then the last bit here, what we've done is we've used this tool to help us create an obligations register that we can use to create an Excel document. And then that's something that we could share. So thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And if you've got any questions, please do let me know.
Thanks very much, Lloyd. And I mean, highlighted the real demo here, like these are stochastic systems, sometimes didn't do what we wanted. And that's why the thread of evals, they get called, and like basically sets of tests that say this is good, this is bad, like this is the kind of boundaries of the behavior we want you to do are really, really important, because as these are stochastic, they'll change over time. As models change under the hood, they will vary their response. So your test cases really enable it to stay on rails and deliver the behavior that you want. The other thing that's worth saying is that was a really good example of taking a group of very large, messy, unstructured documents and turning them into something structured like JSON that can be used. But the follow-on step of it building an Excel that could then be used and exported seems quite obvious. The next thing I would say is it wouldn't be hard once you had your eval set up and you understood the behavior, you had a workflow. If you get a dozen of those contracts a week, right, you might want to build a really sort of bulletproof workflow that enables it to always do the right thing. It always gets the right data. You could go a step further and have it populate specific cells within the sheet. So there are packages and tooling available that means it's not just going to create a CSV of the whole data dump, but actually maybe you've got a financial model that your whole business relies on, and you want to give it the scope or the tooling to be able to update the values in that financial model. And then if you can set this up in a way that's robust and scalable and secure with the right tests, the right support underneath, then actually you go from a world in which new contract lands and you spend days processing and reading and checking it to within 90 seconds of it landing, you've updated the downstream workflows, or you keep a human in the loop and your expert project manager or financial controller on the project gets updates of recommended values to put in. They get the ability to approve, deny, or refine the responses. And you take the human acting as the system integrator with the copy and paste functionality out, and you let the machine do that bit that isn't value add, and give the humans more time to really just layer in their expertise and their knowledge over the top of things. So I think we've got one more slide and then we'll go to questions. Yeah. Oh, okay. So look, we've had a question from India in the audience. So let's open this up. This is just one example of a thing we can build. We showed Excel, we showed email. Any system you can imagine is up for grabs. We can integrate with most things, and we'll get into, over the next year, you'll hear more about MCP, or Model Context Protocol. I guess, have you got like a lightning summary of MCP, Lloyd, that you could share with people and like what it means?
Yeah, most people won't touch it, but for a lot of the machine learning practitioner, it's a tool that helps standardize how agents talk to one another. Think of it as a standardized conversation template that agents can pass across the internet in order to communicate properly.
Yeah, and it's seen huge traction. I was at an AWS event last week, and it was all they were talking about was MCP. And effectively, it's like, whereas with APIs traditionally to integrate pieces of software, MCP is probably going to be the acronym for how large language models integrate with other bits of software. But it's only came out in February. It's early days. Like everything in this space is fast moving and really interesting. So look, with that, there's I'm sure there's plenty of questions in the audience. Thanks very much for your time and attention. Lloyd, there's one from India asking about privacy. How secure is this kind of workflow and these kind of tools?
Yeah, 100%. That's always a consideration when you're building any large language model system. And as Adam pointed out, it is a probabilistic execution. That just means that sometimes these large language models could behave in ways that you don't expect it. Where I was getting to that is we can make this as secure as you want. We could either host it in your own private network and using a isolated language model that only you have access to, or if security is, or the risk appetite is a lot less, then we could really lock it down to the point where it's only internal systems and no one else can have access to it.
Yeah, we were talking at DataFest yesterday. One of the team from the Data Lab is within the Edinburgh University company boundary, and so they have the Edinburgh language model where they've done exactly this. They have a privately hosted, constrained, verified, approved version of the large language models that is safe for use according to Edinburgh University's principles and practices. That enables them all the benefits of using the latest and greatest models without any risk of sharing data or private or sensitive information without the boundary of that organization. And this is a pattern we're seeing time and time again. You might not get the very cutting edge, the model that was released this week on a setup like that, but you'll not be far behind the curve and you can keep everything safe and secure. If this is like an environment that you're trying to navigate in your organization, energy, finance, heavily regulated, it's difficult, and you just want some advice, come and speak to us. We see lots of environments, lots of outcomes. One thing I would say is no two solutions are going to be the same. It really depends on your specific context. And the best way to get that across is just have a chat with us. as with all these webinars, if you want some advice or support, reach out, let us know. And we don't have to have commercials in place. We'll get an NDA signed. We can talk about what we see and drive you to a bit of advice or support within the space or within communities like the Beyond Energy community to compare best practice and see what happens. We have a question from Kojo. This is one for you, Lloyd. Is the vector database completely custom to us? How easy is it to remove documents from this on the front end via the chatbot?
Ideally, you don't want to give your chatbot capability to access write permissions to your database, because that just opens you up to malicious intent, in the sense that people could try and open your chatbot and say, could you delete all data in your database? Is it easy to remove documents? Yes, but I would probably integrate this in the backend system with strict IAM permissions in order to control access to write to the database.
And how, like, if a document's removed from the document management system, is that a full rebuild of the vector database, or how do you change the actual vector database?
Yeah, you can remove specific rows of data by looking for specific IDs. So each document is stored and indexed by either a specific user ID or a specific ID. So it's quite easy to remove it if you want to.
I hope that answers the question, Kojo. Yeah, it's an interesting space. And one of the things that we're building at the moment for a large energy organization is, well, actually, like, compliance support. Like, for a given use case, how much drift does a single model have over certain answers to the same question? How much bias is there in the answers? And we are working with a very large energy organization on layering in a lot of really solid testing and foundations to support their development journey and enable their internal teams to move quickly and iterate development using these tools without opening themselves up to all the risks of things like prompt injection attacks and bias and like shadow updates from the model causing havoc and so on and so forth. Again, really interesting space if you're in a highly regulated environment or with a really low risk appetite that's quite conservative. We'd love to have a chat and talk about some of the things that we've seen that really work to unlock the power of this technology without scaring all the kind of business stakeholders that maybe don't understand the nuances of what it takes to get an AI like this in the hands of developers safely. Okay, well, I think we're fast approaching time. If anyone's got other questions, feel free to email us. Again, the recording will be made available. If you are in or around London next week, come and see us. Let's nerd out about agentic AI, energy, data. I'd love to hear more about what you're up to. Any and all feedback on this webinar, technical glitches and all, is deeply appreciated. We really want to put out things that are useful to you. So the feedback we get helps us steer what we do. We've got a load of really interesting tech coming online, and we can put the work into share that. But it's hard to do or hard to understand what you need without you telling us. So please, really reach out, get in touch. Let's build a really strong community here. And thanks again for giving up your precious time to listen to us. I hope it's been useful.